Good morning and welcome to the Japan Society's regular webinar on current affairs and business, our second, in fact, this week. I am Bill Emmott and I have the honor and pleasure of chairing the Japan Society. Today is, though, our final current affairs webinar for 2020, at least unless news suddenly forces our hand. Our topic concerns the very essence of looking to the future, to the next generation, and to the ideas in humanities and sciences that will occupy our minds and lives in coming decades. In other words, universities in both the UK and Japan. Every government, and actually most private analysts, recognize the basic importance of universities to our societies and economies on all dimensions. Yet as the size of the further education sector has expanded, and as a larger share of 18-year-olds attends university, so the financing of tertiary education has become tougher. In the UK, this led to the introduction of tuition fees under Tony Blair's government, to growing efforts to attract international students, to an increased emphasis on alumni donations and other philanthropy, to the renting out of university property for private events, and to closer collaboration with private companies for research. Some of the same pressures have applied in Japan, but the structure and starting points are very different. Japan has 86 national public universities and 95 local public ones, but then the remaining 597 universities are privately run, with 70% in all of university students in Japan attending private university. Whereas in Britain, private universities are a rarity. In Japan, at both public and private universities, the need for students to pay tuition fees dates back far longer than in the UK. Nevertheless, in Japan, public universities have been facing declining public grants for some years now, which has increased their competition with private colleges for other forms of finance. And all are facing the pressure of demographics, of declining numbers of student-age Japanese, which has also led to a greater effort to recruit foreign students, especially from South Korea and China. And then along came the pandemic, with its impact in both countries, not just on teaching methods, but also on several sources of revenue, especially international students and rentals of university property outside term. So what future can we expect to see for higher education in the UK and Japan? How are universities shaping up in the face both of these longer term challenges and those most specifically and recently of the pandemic? With so much talk about lifelong education, is there really a business model for how to provide it successfully? To address these and other questions, we are truly fortunate to welcome two leading figures from the university sector in both Japan and the UK. In Japan, I welcome Yuko Takahashi, who is president of Tsuda University, a prestigious private women's university that was originally founded in 1900 as one of the first higher education institutions for female education and known as Tsuda College until 2017. President Takahashi's own academic specialty is American Studies, and she has been president of Tsuda since 2016. In the UK, I welcome Professor David Richardson, who has been Vice Chancellor of the University of East Anglia since 2014. His university is much younger than Tsuda, having been founded in 1963, and it has a strong Japanese link through the Sainsbury Institute for Japanese Arts and Culture, founded in Norwich in 1999. David Richardson's own academic specialty is biochemistry. As usual, each of our speakers will open with 10 or so minutes of remarks, following which we will have a discussion and, most important of all, your questions. As usual, please submit questions using the Q&A function and do vote for other people's questions if you'd like me to spot them. Today, I'm going to ask Yuko Takahashi to begin. Welcome to the Japan Society, Professor Takahashi, and over to you.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm so honored and delighted to be with you today. Today, I'm going to talk about our pressing issue tomorrow, actually, next month, because all the universities in Japan are going to give general entrance examinations starting in January next month. So I'm going to talk about our university entrance examinations and their problems under the pandemic of COVID-19 today. Before each university gives its own original exams, most universities participate in the common university entrance examination given by the National Center for University Examinations, which is a national institution. So this academic year, 535,000 students are going to take this exam at the same time in January. And because of this pandemic, 2 sets of makeup exam days are provided as well this year. But not only national universities, such as the University of Tokyo and the University of Kyoto, most of private universities cooperate closely to give this common university entrance examinations to a few hundred students on their campuses. Usually, I think we receive 300 students or so on our campus at Tsuda University. Therefore, right now, we are very much worried about the risks related to this exam regarding COVID-19. For example, number one, how are we going to check the students' health conditions, like such as fever? We are not supposed to take their temperature at the gate at all, but how are we going to check the students' health conditions? And number two, what are we supposed to do with those applicants who have had face-to-face contact with a confirmed case of COVID-19? We are asked to provide a separate room, exam room, for those applicants who are not feeling well and also who had close contact with a patient who has COVID-19. But then, number three, who are going to proctor these students in this special room, in this special separate room? Because in Japan, professors are the ones who are expected to proctor the exams, these national exams. So we need to worry about the professors' health conditions as well. And also, each private university and national university has to give its own original exams in February and March. And we need to be prepared about the same issues as well when we give our original exams. We are now exploring how to cope with COVID-19, especially when we give face-to-face entrance exams on our campuses. This is something that we have never experienced before, but we still have to do it in a very successful manner. So that's one big issue which are pressing us, because those problems we are going to face next month and in February and March. Also, a longer term issue. We should note that most universities in Tokyo are concerned about losing their applicants too, because those students who are living in the countryside might not want to come to Tokyo due to the increasing number of patients with COVID-19, especially in Tokyo. Actually, today, we hit the highest number of new cases in Tokyo. Plus, they have to attend the classes online anyway under this pandemic. Although the Ministry of Education, that so-called MEXT, is pushing all the universities to increase face-to-face classes up to 50%, it is still extremely difficult to do so, especially in Tokyo, because it's impossible to hold our students if we have to keep a certain distance between one student and another student. So that's one big issue as well. So tonight I can, not tonight, this afternoon, it's 9 o'clock actually in Tokyo, so I said tonight, but I cannot list all the programs related to university entrance exams under the pandemic, but I can tell you that there are just so many issues that we have to deal with. And also we are so overwhelmed with all the details of these difficult programs related to our sort of special entrance examination system. So that's the thing I really wanted to share with you tonight. Of course, we have much more keen issues related to this pandemic, but the most pressing issue is the entrance examinations. So I wanted to introduce this program to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yuko-san. Thank you. That's very interesting and very difficult to manage, I can tell. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about that and about other sort of fundamental issues about managing.
Because the Minister of Education told us that we are not going to cancel our so-called center exam, even if the government issued this emergency declaration. So we are going to have this exam in January, mid-January, no matter how many new cases we are going to have.
Wow, regardless, yes.
Yes, regardless. So we have to face it.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to now hand over to David Richardson in Norwich to talk about what's facing British universities and the UEA in particular.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Takahashi, for sharing some of those challenges around exams and actually in-person, face-to-face teaching, which are challenges that UK universities face as well. So I won't repeat those challenges, except to say I share them with you, and I'm sure we can talk about them further in a moment. I would also like to express my thanks for being invited to join this panel. I'm looking forward to the question and answers. I can see things coming on the chat already. And thank Bill for that very kind introduction. We're very proud actually of our long-term association with the Japan Society, as Bill mentioned, through the Sainsbury Institute for the Study of Japanese Arts and Culture. I actually am the chair of the board of that institute, and so up until the pandemic, at least, I spent quite a lot of time visiting Japan and visiting various academic institutions in Japan and many other institutions. I actually should have been there now had it not been for the pandemic, but one hopes that one day we'll get there again soon. And just to finish, because I actually already saw a comment coming into the chat about Japanese studies. Certainly at UEA, Japan is one of our key strategic areas, our 5 key strategic global areas, and we have a Japan dialogue group that brings together colleagues from many disciplines that study various aspects of Japan. And we have a very vibrant Japanese languages program as well, and Japanese studies program, which I'm happy to talk about more later as well. But let's talk about COVID-19 first. As an institution, COVID-19 has had different impacts on different UK universities in different ways. There's no doubt about that. No 2 universities are alike. Speaking from a UEA perspective, the actual infection rates amongst our students and staff have been actually relatively low, very low compared to some. We moved very early to actually put in place our own mass testing and trace and track system right at the start of this new term. Many universities didn't have the capacity to do that, but we did that. And it meant that we were able to very quickly identify what you might call silent spreaders amongst our university community and isolate them and their households, but also support them as well, which is very important. And actually, like many universities, many of our academics have been very prominent in helping the local and the UK national effort in tackling COVID-19, and also supporting mental health and well-being. That's a really important aspect for us to think about going forward, which I'll touch on later. But for example, one of our academics, Andy Jones, has been researching the importance of green spaces for well-being in Japan, which I know is an important part of Japanese culture. But thinking about COVID-19 and those longer term impacts, what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is briefly go into areas around student staff mental health and well-being, the civic role of universities, and the global role. And there's no doubt that COVID-19 has made us all look at our long-term plans. How many of us had global pandemics in our risk registers, but we all do now. But in any long-term plan, it was always important that our long-term plan had sufficient resilience to deal with something like Brexit for the UK, but also like a global pandemic, even if they weren't in our risk registers. And I think it's fair to say that many universities' plans have showed that resilience, and certainly UEA's has. Yes, there's been financial challenges, but we are a resilient sector. And actually, UEA was on a growth, had a growth plan. And we will continue to follow that growth plan, because the impact of COVID-19 on recruitment has not been as bad as we feared. That's possibly partly because we're now poised to come out of the demographic dip in the UK, and we can actually anticipate large numbers of students seeking to come to UK universities over the next few years. What COVID-19 has shown is that there's no lack of appetite for students coming to universities. Despite the challenges, they still came in their hundreds of thousands over the at the start of this term. And the impact on international students was not as bad as we feared either. The appetite still seems to be there for people to come to campuses to be educated. So actually, I'm optimistic for UK universities as we come out of that demographic dip. But we have had financial hits in the short term. And therefore, we do need to think about how we use our finances in a very careful but focused way to develop our universities for this new world, for more blended teaching, thinking about what this means for our campus spaces. Campus spaces in which we might need less large lecture theatres and more spaces suitable for blended learning. Campus spaces which might have more shared office spaces as more people actually mix home working with campus-based working. But we must think also about what it means to be a quintessentially campus university, as my university is. Yes, we can do online teaching, but you need to have that social experience, that social learning that comes with being part of a community. So how do we blend the two together in a way that continues to make a campus university a powerful place to be? Many of us were on this journey already, it has to be said. Most universities were pursuing blended learning, but what we've had to do is, in the space of 5 months, complete a project that should have taken 5 years. We've done it in short order. Now we need to iterate that, because when you do something in short order, some things work, some things work less well. But it does open up opportunities as well for transnational education. Having put so much now online, we can open up our education more widely around the world. And UEA, for example, is just about to start on a major initiative in Africa on transnational online education with partners in Africa. But it has come at a cost, and I don't mean a financial cost. I mean a cost to the mental health and well-being of our staff and our students. This has been exhausting. Staff have been working really stupidly long hours since March, since the lockdowns began in this country, and they can't continue at that pace, and we need to understand that. This has caused exceptional stress on our staff, and if we continue with this blended learning way, we need to think about how we do that in a way that relieves some of that stress and some of that workload from our staff going forward. It's important that we focus on the student experience. There's been a lot of talk about the student experience of blended learning, but what about the staff experience of blended learning? My university community has 22,000 people in it. It includes 5,000 staff, a quarter of that community. So rather than think about the student experience, going forward, I want to think about the student and staff experience, the community experience. People and culture is going to be critical going forward. So actually, as of January, UEA will have a new division, the People and Culture Division, headed up by a divisional head of People and Culture, where we will bring that focus around supporting all of the people of the university. And think about how we use our campus spaces to good effect to support mental health and well-being. We've got a wonderful campus with green spaces, and actually it's going to shortly become the home of a gift from of Japanese cherry trees, courtesy of the Japan Society. So thank you very much for that, and it will help our mental health and well-being. We also need to tackle discrimination in education. Education should see everybody treated equitably. And COVID-19 has had a disproportionate effect on students and staff from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds in the UK. Certainly, I'd be interested to hear more about discrimination in education in Japan. Maybe we could talk about that later. But I've been leading nationally in the UK a group that's been putting in place guidance to universities to tackle racism and racial harassment across our sector. And I'm afraid that our sector suffers from institutional racism. It's uncomfortable to say that, but it's true. And that's been perpetuated even more in different ways during COVID-19. So we need to address that. And a couple of weeks ago, I published guidance for the sector as to how the sector should go about addressing racism, racial harassment, but also alongside that, discrimination in higher education in the wider senses. It's vital that universities think about whether they really are providing spaces that provide an equal opportunity for people from all backgrounds to have a good education. And COVID-19 has exposed some issues there, which I think we need to tackle urgently. And I think I know that there's some good work going on in Japan addressing discrimination in Japanese universities, particularly gender discrimination. I'm sure we could hear more about that later on. In terms of making sure that we open universities up for everybody more so than we've done at the moment, we need to focus on how we provide scholarships for widening access. UEA is a university of sanctuary. Norwich is a city of sanctuary. Education is for everyone. We were born in the 1960s on that mission. But we're fortunate that we have a number of scholarships from Japanese organizations, the Sasakawa Postgraduate Studentships, for example, funding bursaries from the Toshiba International Foundation, the Ishibashi Foundation, enables us to bring students together in different fora and educate them. The other big area that I want to talk about is our civic role. What the COVID-19 has shown is how important universities are in their regions. We've always known they provide a huge economic benefit for their regions, but now that our regions of the UK at least are suffering economically as we come out of COVID-19, that economic boost that investing in universities can give is more important now than ever. And think about what our universities did for our regions. They provided doctors, nurses, health professionals, social workers, teachers, and a big infrastructure for supporting the battle against COVID-19. And the science that universities do produce the solutions. Without the science, we wouldn't have had the testing programs. Without the science, we wouldn't have the vaccinations. The Oxford vaccination, that's going to be rolled out across the UK soon, has been developed by a research group led by Sarah Gilbert, who's a UEA alumnus. We're very proud of that. In 2020, Michael Houghton, another UEA alumnus who helped produce the vaccine against hepatitis C a few years ago, was recognized with a Nobel Prize for physiology and medicine. This work is important and it helps you tackle global challenges. So it's important that governments continue to invest in university research and early stage blue skies research, because you never know when that's going to become important. Finally, because I know my time is running out, the global role. What we've seen with COVID-19 is a global pandemic. It starts with one country, it rolls out like a tsunami across the globe. The way we respond to that global pandemic requires that we all work together. A vaccine developed in one country needs to roll out to many other countries. But other global challenges haven't gone away. Climate change is still there. The challenges of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are still there. And we need to work together across nations, the way we have actually to tackle COVID-19, to tackle these global issues. So my mantra going forward is cooperation, not competition. Universities should cooperate together, not compete, and that's particularly true for my approach to our partnerships with Japan. Cooperate around climate change, cooperate around arts and culture, because another area that I'm concerned about is that the focus on the science of COVID-19 has led people not to focus on the importance of supporting humanity in other ways through arts and culture. So at UEA, we've formed Creative UEA, and we support those arts and culture areas as well. We're a city, a UNESCO City of Literature. Another of our graduates is the Nobel laureate, Kazuo Ishiguro, and this year we're celebrating 50 years of creative writing. So I'd like to see more opportunities for global collaborations around arts and culture, working together with different countries, and certainly we'll be seeking to do that through our partnerships. And also continuing to make sure that we promote the many, many different ways in which our students and our staff can continue to be mobile globally. We can do a lot globally online like we do at the moment, but we still need to promote in a sustainable way global movement across people, across countries, so that we can continue to develop our students as global citizens. So in conclusion, we can see ourselves coming out of this now. The vaccines are helping us to do that. No doubt there are challenges ahead, but I'm optimistic about those challenges because I think we have learned actually in different ways how to come together as communities in response to COVID-19, local communities, national communities, but also international communities. Everyone talks about the world being very different going forward, and it will be. But universities have a responsibility and a capacity to deliver substantially for society in this new world. And in my view, in our universities, when we have thousands of students, we've got people who are at the most creative, innovative, and enterprising stages of their lives. And I think if we stimulate that, and I know we can, then we are in safe hands for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that very positive and optimistic view, and especially emphasis on collaboration and the future collaboration between universities, including, no doubt, and I hope, between the UK and Japan. I've got lots of questions of my own, but some are coming in immediately which are directed at the two of you, and I think I'm going to jump to those straight away because they follow on so directly from what you've both said. Yuko Takahashi, Janet Hunter, who is herself an academic and a board member of the Japan Society, has asked you, why is the ministry, MEXT, so intransigent in terms of the entrance examinations? Surely, she says, it threatens to worsen the crucial relationship between universities and MEXT, which have already shown some tensions in the past. How would you describe your understanding of MEXT and its attitude?
I think it's because if we cannot give this national exam, so-called, it's a disaster for high school students. And it's just, I guess, high school teachers and all their educators in higher education, they don't know what to do with this high school seniors who are graduating because they have to have their, they have to be admitted to some universities. So these exams, national exams, must be given, I guess. That's why they really need to give these exams on time. So that's why even if this as the state of emergency is declared, they feel that we really need to give this national exam. But actually, national exam is part of our exam system because each university, including national universities, must give its own original exams as well. National universities usually gives their exam late February and March. And private universities like ours usually give our original exams in February. So this is a very crucial moment for all the universities officials, I think.
So I'm going to ask David Richardson, because in the UK, our authorities decided, as in some other countries, not to have the exams, but instead to use a mixture of school assessments and a rather notorious algorithm, which to choose applicants and so forth without the exams because of the reason. And that didn't go very well either. But nevertheless, I thought David Richardson might just briefly compare experience on that.
Yes, well, in fact, actually, because the UK is split up into devolved nations, already different countries of the devolved nations are doing different things, even for the forthcoming summer, with the English government saying that we will go ahead with A-level exams, for example, but the Scottish government saying they'll do it by this centre assessed grade system, in the Welsh Northern Ireland government, I think, likewise. So my actual position on this one is that, given the challenges that we're likely to have next year, or the vaccines aren't going to be rolled out really and effective in creating herd immunity much before July, August. We might start rolling them out, but we've got a lot of people to inoculate. That, I think, the pragmatic thing to do would be to have stuck with centre assessed grades, i.e. not exams, and learned as much as possible from what went wrong last time. And to have made that decision back in September, so that we didn't lose the 3 or 4 months we've now lost in having that learning experience, and building as much into the school term in this case, to ensure that you could do high quality centre assessed grades. Because my concern is that, having not made that decision, we'll get to April, and because we aren't as far out of the pandemic as government might wish, they'll end up at much shorter notice cancelling A-level exams again and having to do just that. The Scottish government has called that early and has cancelled the exams and gone to centre assessed grades. Last time the Scottish government called it early as well, and the English government followed. And I'm afraid, I fear that will happen again. Speaking from a university side, if you like, as autonomous institutions, we don't have national exams, so we can examine in the way that we wish as an institution. When we come back in January, our assessments will be entirely online.
So, and I think of course, it partly substantially will reflect the difference of the COVID situation in the two countries, where Japan.
But I should tell you that we gave a lot of universities gave their autumn exams online, actually, because we have much fewer applicants in autumn compared to so-called general entrance examinations. Because at Tsuda University, for example, we have only 30 or 40 students applying in autumn, because it's a special exam, not general exam. We have so-called admission office exam, or much more smaller scale. But in February and March, we receive about 800 or 900 applicants at one time. So we have to give bigger general entrance examinations in February and March. That's why it gets more complicated. But still, and exams are the ones we have to base on when we select our students. So that's why I guess most universities are facing very difficult issues right now. And students who attend private universities, the ratio is about 75% actually. It's more than 70 and close to 80%. So most university students in Japan attend private universities. And those who attend national university is about 20%. So,
thank you. Yes, no, thank you. So I'm sticking with a COVID-related question first. I'm going to just pass a question to David Richardson from David Warren, who's been previous chairman of the Japan Society, but also has been chair of the Council of the University of Kent. A UK higher education question for Vice Chancellor Richardson. What are the implications of having to move towards a mixture of online and face-to-face teaching for the future of tuition fees? And how likely is it that the UK government will implement the outstanding Augar report on the future financing of the sector? So it's a sort of partly a long-term question, partly a short-term question.
Well, thank you. First of all, hello, David Warren. We know each other well. David also sits on the advisory board of the Sainsbury Institute for the Study of Japanese Arts and Culture, which I chair. Let me first of all say that high quality blended learning and the offer of high quality blended learning is expensive in terms of human resource and financial resource. It's no cheaper than in-person learning. So there is no reason per se why anyone should think that, if you like, the unit cost of educating a student is any less through the online blended than it is through in-person. And therefore, the fee itself, or the unit of resource, as I perhaps prefer to call it, that a university requires per student to educate that person should not go down. The question of where that unit of resource comes from is a different matter. At the moment, it comes largely through the student. The government gives a loan to the student, and the student passes that on to us through the fee. There are calls that actually, or suggestions that the balance between the sort of state and the student funding has moved too far towards the student and should move back more towards the state. I think those debates will continue. And no doubt, if there were a change of government, there might be a change of approach to that. But the critical thing is that universities need that unit of resource, and that unit resource needs to actually not decrease in real terms as we progress over the next few years. Now, the Augar report was suggesting that certain subject areas were cheaper for universities to run than others. I think that requires some level of scrutiny. There are different delivery methods for different subject areas, but if you compare an arts and humanities subject directly to, say, a biological sciences subject, my discipline, and you might say, well, that the biological sciences apparently may cost more because it requires laboratory space. But the arts and humanities subjects require a lot of other infrastructure, which the scientists aren't using as much, and you need to support that as well. And it's not a fee to actually do that particular subject. It's a fee to join the university and take advantage of the entire infrastructure of the university. And that's actually where most of the cost goes: supporting the student support services, supporting the library, supporting the infrastructure of the estate. That's all coming out of the fee as well. It's not just paying for that time spent in the lecture. And I think people need to understand the wider context of what the fee is spent on. So I don't think the Augar review and recommendations on fee will be implemented. I've not heard anything from the Minister of Education of the university suggest that it will. It's probably not the question David was asking, but there were other things in the Augar review about a better integration of tertiary education, further education and higher education. So you have a much more integrated tertiary education offer. I think that could happen. And actually, I think there's great opportunity there for universities, but that's probably a longer conversation.
Yuko-san, just on this question of blended online learning, or you could just give us a few moments on whether your plans at Tsuda beyond the pandemic. The pandemic is gone. What role will online teaching play after the pandemic at Tsuda?
Right now, we are not sure, but we call it hybrid teaching. And most of the courses, no, I shouldn't say most of the courses, but some of the courses, we are using the method of hybrid teaching. That is, some students are in class actually, but most of the students are taking courses, attending classes online. So, so we call it blended but hybrid teaching or learning. But after the pandemic, we really would like to have face-to-face teaching mostly. But still, when we have lecture series like this, for example, we can invite speakers abroad very easily using Zoom system. So we would like to have more of this kind of transnational lecture series using this online system. And but students are very much interested in, I think, learning face-to-face.
Right. So yes, as
Especially undergraduate students. Some graduate program is taught online, and once a month they attend real classes in a classroom. But so we did have this kind of graduate program before the pandemic of COVID-19, but still we required all the graduate students to come to a real classroom, face-to-face classroom once a month before the pandemic.
If I just could come in, I think it's really important face-to-face teaching. And any blended future needs to continue to have that, because it's actually really important for student mental health and well-being as well, to get people away from staring at these screens that we've been staring at hour after hour, and into a real environment where you can have that social interaction, which is such an important part of the university learning experience, as well as the education, the actual academic side of things.
Now, there's a question about Japanese universities and teaching in English, which I shall put in for you, Yuko-san. Connor Stott Butcher has asked, a few Japanese universities he's spoken with or whose prospectuses he's read offer bachelor's degrees in history that are taught in English. This can put historians studying Japanese history at a disadvantage. Are there any plans to put courses like these that aid in British understanding of Japan to be offered in English as well as Japanese? What's the sort of picture that you are feeling about in terms of how much is taught in English and how much in Japanese?
I don't know the exact ratio, but for example, at Tsuda University, we have just started our new program called Japan Studies in English. So we teach Japanese studies in English, for example. So that includes history and cultural studies and gender studies on Japan and Japanese culture taught in English. So we invited new professors who speak English as their first language for that.
And that will be for all your students, or will that be all of your students in studying that topic, or is that, can people choose?
Not all of them, but I don't know the percentage, but it's one course.
Right.
So about civil, I don't know, about 30 to 50 students probably attend this course on our campus.
Right.
But other universities as well, I think the number of those students who learn contents in English is increasing.
Yes, so then that offers more of a chance to internationalize in terms of the relationship with other universities.
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, Waseda University has I don't know their English name, but School of International Studies.
Mm-hmm.
They offer all the courses in English only.
All right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And university in Akita Prefecture, they teach their students in English only as well. So we have those programs increasing.
Oh, good.
Can I
Yes,
just
David.
ask, I was just interested in terms of, you're talking about undergraduate there, but for example, in research and postgraduate research, if a UK undergraduate wanted to graduate but work in some of those wonderful research facilities like you have in Japan, would they find that English was being spoken in the research laboratories?
Do you mean
I'm thinking of PhD student level. So someone has graduated from an undergraduate in the UK but wants to study for a doctorate in Japan, but doesn't at least initially speak Japanese. You know, would they find that a comfortable environment in terms of being able to talk to the other researchers in the research laboratories?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think we often talk about undergraduate, but I think there's more opportunity for internationalization through the postgraduate research, and great opportunity as well.
Our students tend to study abroad for their graduate work.
Okay.
Instead of going to graduate school in Japan. So because our mostly our students major in English or international studies or international relations and computer science and math. So they tend to study abroad after they finish their undergraduate work.
And the same questioner, Connor Scott Butcher, is asking, are there efforts in 2021 to reconnect British universities with their Japanese summer schools? He's mentioned such as those linked with SOAS, but I mean, I'm not familiar with the field, but you both may well be. Are the summer school connections going to resume?
Every summer we send our, every summer we used to send our students to York University. And after they spend a few weeks at York, they did have afternoon tea at St. Hilda's at Oxford. And because our founder studied at St. Hilda's Hall in the late 19th century. So they attended a professor's lecture there. But this year we couldn't do that. We were not able to send our students to York, of course. But students are very much interested in attending a summer school in the UK. At least our students are.
Yes, and we put our summer schools online. We had to, but they were still well attended. But we'll be seeking to do them in person again when the opportunity emerges, and as I hope it will in short order. It might not be this summer. That might be too early. It might be it might be the following year. We just have to see how things go.
Now, there's a question from Natsumi Ikoma, specifically for you, David, about your point about institutional racism as one of the problems. She asks, may I ask what solutions are considered at UEA to tackle this challenge? Can you just say a few words about that very interesting and important point?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. And I should preface it by saying, if you just Google Universities UK advice for tackling racial harassment, you'll find an 80-page document that will give you all sorts of ideas and a foreword by me, that my group that put it together. Institutional racism is bound up in many different ways now at universities, so the solutions are multifactorial. So what I did is I put in place my own task force, the Vice Chancellor's Tackling Racism Task Force, which draws on people from right across the university who can help me to understand where racism exists in what you might call covert forms. Overt racism, we can identify and challenge it. It's the covert forms, hidden away in our curricula and the way our curricula are constructed, hidden away in the fabric of our buildings, or the atmosphere that perhaps someone from Black, Asian, minority ethnic background finds in a particular classroom or a particular laboratory. And the only way to do that is talk to people who have the lived experience of racism and racial harassment. Now, anybody looking at me, if you can see me on screen, can see that I'm a white vice chancellor. I self-evidently don't have the lived experience of racial harassment, but I can lead, and I can lead change. And that's what my task force is going to do. And only by getting into tackling that, the entire structure for our university, will we start to see progress in tackling the degree awarding gaps, the 20% gap between a white student graduating with a good honours degree and a Black student. The minute two equally talented students, one white, one Black, cross the threshold of my university, the Black student has a 20% less chance of graduating with a good honours degree. Why is that? Until we understand that, we can't get rid of that discrimination. So you really got to get into so many different parts of the university and identify what's going wrong. So there's no short answer to that, but you've got to afford an institutional priority, and you've got to get the Vice Chancellor to lead it, and you have to get the governing body to hold the Vice Chancellor to account and make sure that you're reviewing your progress. But you need to use people with the lived experience, and they have to believe that you mean it this time, and it's action, not words.
Do you have an equivalent issue at Tsuda, Yuko-san, of discrimination, particularly to do with international students or students of a Korean background, for example, or any other category?
I think graduation rate is almost the same.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, we don't have so many international students at Tsuda, so it's hard to compare with David's university. But still, the graduation rate is not that different at Tsuda. Not only Tsuda, but other universities as well.
I should say that to the credit of the UK's Vice Chancellors, they've recognised the challenge. And it wasn't easy for me to sort of publicly challenge the sector and say we have this problem across the sector, not just anyone's university picking on no one, but across the sector. But I really do sense that they are rising to the challenge. So I do feel positive about this going forward over the next 2 years.
Picking up on the point that you made, David, about student and staff mental health and welfare, Martin Hatfull has asked, what longer term changes do you both expect in terms of policy and practice regarding this issue of student and staff mental health and welfare following the pandemic experience? You said rightly you need to concentrate on it now. It's a real big issue now, but will this change how you think about it in future? First you, David.
Yes, I think it will. I think the speed at which we moved literally overnight into our entire offer online meant that we did not have the opportunity to assess the well-being, the mental health and well-being impacts of that. Even if we tried to assess it, actually, probably we would never have got that assessment right. I think it's been unanticipated, not just in higher education, I think in other sectors as well. So recognizing that this is with us for a while, the blended learning, we now need to do that bit of work. We need to understand better how this does impact on people. Many people will continue to work from home, not just in the higher education sector, but in other sectors as well. How do we support that better? How do we ensure that that environment is one that actually supports your mental health and well-being rather than is debilitating for it? But also, we need to review what it means to deliver blended learning in the context of workloads. You know, you can't just lift the old system and drop it on the new system and use the same workload model. That's just not going to work. So it needs a complete reappraisal of how we think about what we're asking our staff to do. That's why we've put in place this new division, really, where we're going to actually look at that in some detail, but in short order. And I think you need again to work with those who are actually doing it. I mean, look, I'm not providing the blended learning. I mean, I'm doing a lot of other things which are exhausting, but I'm not. So we need to learn from their experiences, but we can't take 2 years over it, just because some people could crash.
May I ask how you offered counseling sessions, for example, at your university?
For staff or students, or both?
To your students.
Students, yeah. So I was
counselor. How did they offer their counseling sessions, for example?
What we
when
you're talking more about the staff before, but with respect to students, I mean, I think universities have always had stronger provision for supporting student mental health and well-being than for supporting staff mental health and well-being. There'll probably be some exceptions to that, but I think most would accept that, because we've talked a lot always about the student experience. We have the National Student Survey. So actually we had a lot of provision in to support student mental health and well-being, including a counselling service that was already operating online as well as physically, because a lot of students preferred to interact with counsellors online even before COVID-19. So we simply strengthened those sort of areas, and our feedback from that has been very effective indeed. And when students had to isolate in accommodation because they tested positive for COVID-19, again, we could put a strong support system around them. We'll continue to work on that, and we have a particular stream of work. And we have a Pro-Vice Chancellor student experience as a student mental health and as a mental health professional. So that's very strong, and I think we need to do an equivalent quality piece of provision now for our staff.
I see.
So, on this question of online courses and to some degree the workload question that you've raised, David, Michael Spencer has asked, to what extent are your teaching staff having to reshape the content of courses and the method of delivery in response to the online environment? And really there's a further question related to that from one who teaches at London South Bank University, or is vice chair of South Bank University, about students preferring at present online teaching to face-to-face, and asks, has this also been true in Japan, or is it just compulsory to attend face-to-face sessions? So perhaps there's two questions together to you, Yuko-san. Redesign the courses, but also do you make it compulsory or voluntary for the students?
I think a lot of our faculty members reshaped their courses to when they teach their courses online. And students, of course, prefer most students, I should say, preferred face-to-face classes to online classes, but still some students are very worried about COVID-19, so that they refuse to take trains, for example, to come to classes, so that they are not necessarily, they don't like, they may not like online classes, but they refuse to take trains, so that they have to, stick to online courses instead of attending face-to-face classes. So it's hard to say, which our students prefer more, but so that we feel that we have to give options to our students. They can either take, face-to-face classes or online classes. So that's, right now, I feel that way. It's very important for us to give our students options, 2 options at least.
Thank you. So last word to you, David, as we come to close.
Yeah.
Is it very different?
So it's been estimated that it takes probably about 12 hours to transfer a 1-hour in-person lecture into a high-quality online provision. So imagine if you're doing that for an entire course. It's a huge amount of work, and it reflects the fact that our wonderful academics just have so much pride in how you use technologies to provide a different kind of offer. The students are enjoying the online teaching because it's good. we shouldn't throw all that away. That's a lot of work gone into doing that. So as we go into the blended, I think the question now is how we then continue to provide that using the technology we can, but blend that with something that supplements it and enhances it in the classroom on the campus in a way that the students will like. Not going to be straightforward, but that's the challenge for me for that blended learning going forward. Blend the two so you get the best out of both worlds.
Mm.
Well, thank you very much to you both. We've come to the end of our hour. I think there are many more things that we could have carried on talking about, but it's been a very rich and detailed conversation. So thank you, Yuko Takahashi, President of Tsuda.
Thank you for having me to your series. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be with you all.
Thank you for giving up part of late in your evening, and thank you, David Richardson, in your very busy time from Norwich, and thank you to all of the attendees and for all your questions, and thank you all for your support of the Japan Society throughout this difficult year, but actually a year that's enabled us to explore all sorts of new subjects and have new speakers welcoming people from Japan, which has been wonderful. So thank you very much to you all, and have a very good day. Thank you so much.